This podcast has stories of real-life events and true crime that
Hey
happens
guys, I
every
need you to
day.
be quiet.
These stories may contain adult language and graphic or disturbing details not suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is advised.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Check your left over for full evacuation at this time.
They're pulling them out.
10-1-1. Advise ready for camp.
God.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
And I'm Chuck.
And I still haven't changed the intro. I changed it once. Remember, we had a much longer intro way back, but I still say the same thing. You still say the same thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You know who we are.
Yeah, we know who we are. Hopefully you know who we are if you're here with us. And we're getting into the nitty-gritty. I think this episode comes out, if I am looking at the rehearsal or the release schedule properly, we're at the beginning of February right now. Or maybe the second week of February. And so we don't talk about current events here. We talk about them on Locker Room, but this is when we're recording it. So the only updates you get, sometimes the updates you get when we talk about things on this intro are a little old because they happened 3 or 4 weeks ago. But deal with it. We are here with a guest this week. We love it when we have our interviews and we have our guests. And once again, we've been getting a lot of really good guests, thanks to producer Dylan and some people that have written some cool books. I wanted to give another shout out to the author Daryl Utt that we had on, and we posted it on our story. But I've got a copy of his book.
Yeah, Grit to Glory.
Grit to Glory. I just started reading it. We got a nice little, says, Tom, thanks for your dedicated and honorable service to our great country. Keep impacting lives at the War Stories podcast. You have grit. All the best, Daryl. And a nice little inscription from it. So thanks, Daryl. And I hope you got some people got this book for Christmas, like we did. But
yeah, I'm still waiting on mine.
Well, you live closer to our producer, and I got mine already. So,
yeah.
But then again, the mail service and everything in LA, as of right now, we're recording this during the time when all of Los Angeles is on fire. So
yeah, Los Angeles is burning.
We covered that on Locker Room last week. But anyway, so here we are. We have another author and veteran on this week. Chuck, we have Clay Novak. Who do tell us about Clay?
So Clay Novak, he's a retired Army officer. He's a leader. He's a patriot. He's an author, media consultant, podcast co-host, military consultant for the Amazon series Reacher season 3. Ooh, that's going to be a great season when that comes out. I cannot wait. I am on the edge of my seat for that. He also is part of the Alan J. Lynch Medal of Honor Veterans Foundation, G-Code Tactical. Is so many things on here. And welcome to the show, sir.
Welcome to the show, Clay. How are you, sir?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
I love the title. The novel is called Keep Moving, Keep Shooting.
Yeah. So the novel is, it was kind of my transition from active duty into retirement. And I wrote as a little bit of an outlet, but it was something, it's something that the main character says to himself over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of not just it's a kind of his mantra, but it's something that, when I was a young private and I went to basic training, a drill sergeant said it out loud. And, it was kind of one of those, when in doubt, keep moving and keep shooting. And it just always stuck with me. So, I wrote it into the book and it became the mantra for the main character. And it's something that I've always kind of stuck with through my life.
Well, I was always told, if your shooting stance and sight picture are good, you're not moving and utilizing cover enough.
You know what's funny is that you have a similar like mantra saying, then you keep moving, keep shooting, keep moving forward, shoot, move, communicate type of thing. I had something similar when I got out because I was like, I'm Marine, improvise, adapt, and overcome, because that's going to keep me from not being homeless. And I would say that to myself every single day.
I say it
trying
all
to
the time.
make it through.
Yeah, because that's all you can do. Life's going to change. Life's going to throw shit piles at you. You improvise, you adapt, you overcome. That's the only, or die. Those are your choices. You can improvise, adapt, and overcome, or you can sit there and die. It's your choice. My old man had he said in the locker room at LAPD, in one of the stations, in the locker room, there was a big banner up on top of the lockers that just said, "Oil your slide or die."
I like it.
Yeah, right.
That's
I like
actually really nice.
Simple and effective.
Yeah. That's especially if you were, if they probably still had a bunch of guys that grew up on revolvers, right?
Yeah,
And
my
then
dad was issued a revolver.
Yeah.
And in the Lethal Weapon, John McClane era of the M9 being adopted by the military and all the testing the military did, the LAPD finally authorized 2 semi-automatics, the Smith & Wesson and the Beretta. And so he bought his own Beretta because he had been issued a revolver, and the guys were saying, "Oil your slide or die." They weren't used to having a semi-auto that they had to maintain. Because wheel guns will work,
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
You pull through a double action. I mean, it's as long as there's nothing physically broken, that thing's gonna work every time.
Yeah.
I would say that when they so the LAPD, they ended up going to Glocks, right? And they went to Glock, and the Glock is, dude, it's like the revolver of the slides, because it's like a whore. You can beat it up, you can throw dirt on it, you can mess it up, you can smack it around, and when you want it to go off, it's going off.
It's a fat girl who gives good head and knows how to cook. May not look like much, but it'll work every time.
You can dress them up though. Like nowadays, I've got
put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a Glock. And I'm not a Glock guy. I never have been. I own one. But it was because it was the only 45 I could get with 10+1 in a subcompact. And when you're working undercover and you carry a 45, that was the only option. But I will tell you, I'm the only person I know with a Glock that has a blued slide, and it came like that. Yeah.
Wow.
The slide to my Glock is blued, not Parkerized. And that's how I got it from the gun store. And that was one of the only reasons that I was drawn to it. The guy's like, yeah, he custom ordered it, didn't pick it up. So if you want it, I'll sell it to you. Perfect. Done.
Oh, wow. That's a one-off. Yeah, definitely hang on to that thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, the shooting that I got in on St. Patrick's Day, I was carrying that thing, so it's never going anywhere. And one of my kids already shot it, is in love with it, and said, when something happens to you, Pop, I get that one. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's fair.
Isn't it amazing how they claim those things so quickly? Like my son, he goes in my gun room all the time. I want that one. I'm like, dude, I'm 51. Like, slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not that old. I mean, I'm like 2 or 3 years younger than you. And my kids are already claiming my shit. And my son, but they all have different tastes. My son wants he wants my double actions, or my single action only Colt Peacemaker, a single action army. And he wants my SIG XP carry. So he wants the most modern gun with the red dot, and he wants the old cowboy gun. My son-in-law wants my M1A and my Glock 30 with the blued slide, and my daughter wants the Beretta. She loves the Beretta.
Oh, so they're kind of in agreement on like the things that they want, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
There's no fighting
arguments.
Yeah.
Does your son have siblings? Is that way he's like already staking?
I have a daughter. I have a daughter as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, your daughter.
Yeah. So no, I have a son and a daughter. I both. So my daughter is actually, she's very much a product of her old man. She's graduated from college and went to Korea, and she's teaching English over there. So yeah, like 23 years old, wanted to travel the world. I mean, what am I going to say? No, So she picked up and left. Now she does have I customized a Ruger 1022 for her. Thumb hole stock, bull barrel, the whole 9 yards. And you get her on a bench, and really after the first 10-round magazine, after she kind of gets the nerves out, she can drive tacks with it. But she is, other than that, not a lot of interest. So my son has claimed literally everything else.
So I had to
buy my 1911 out of my cold dead hands in the crematorium. So
I started claiming my dad's guns early because he had another kid, my stepsister, or my half sister. My half sister, and she started asking for things. I'm like, hey, whoa. I claimed that one long before you were here, little one. So I was like, those are mine. That's mine. Those are the only 2 ones I want. That's it. Because I want that wheel gun.
Yeah.
And the SIG. and that's it. Because the Sega's from World War II, and the wheel gun my dad carried on duty, and that's it. You can have
Well,
everything else. You can have
I'll
the
get my
house, I don't
dad's
care.
shadow box, which has his original LAPD issue revolver in it.
Nice.
But yeah. But anyway, this isn't gun talk, even though we could probably spend the whole episode doing it. Clay,
Entirely.
how did you? So you're an Army veteran and an author, and you're a media consultant. You are first of all, you have one of my you have my jealousy because working on Reacher sounds like a blast. The show is great. They finally got it right. I always joke around and I say that the guy who produced the Reacher movies must have had dyslexia because he read Jack Reacher is 6'5" and cast Tom Cruise because he's 5'6".
Yeah.
That's crazy.
and-
That's a stark difference. It's crazy.
And as much as the Reacher movies, if you renamed the character, they're objectively decent movies for a Tom Cruise film, right?
I agree.
They're not
yeah.
terrible movies.
They're not terrible
just
movies.
Not Jack Reacher.
Correct.
And so with Alan Ritchson taking just inhabiting that role, it's if you haven't seen it, it is so good. I've watched the first season and second season by myself, and then I got my son and my wife into it, and I rewatched the whole thing. Can't wait for season 3. So you have my jealousy for getting to work on that show.
Yeah. So season 3 drops February 20th.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the first 3 episodes are coming out that day. So everybody will get a nice burst to start them off. And then it'll be weekly for the last, 5 episodes after that. But
Can you give any hints?
No hint.
So there's 2 trailers out, at
Yeah.
least 2 trailers that I've
All I
seen.
want.
The thing that I will tell that I have told everybody is that as big as Alan Ritchson is, and he's a big man,
He's a big man.
the guy that one of the villains in
Yes,
this
I
series
saw the
makes
photo.
him look like a midget.
I've seen the photo. It makes Alan Ritchson look small.
Oh,
The guy's enormous.
Can I guess who it is? Is it the white guy from the UK that has a tattoos up his neck?
Nope.
No, it's nobody you've ever.
Oh.
It's nobody you know. I
Is it-
can almost promise you.
I was hoping it was Martin Ford because I follow him.
No, it's a great show and really a great group of people to work with. It's just kind of my first foray into Hollywood, and got an opportunity offered to me through a good friend, and took advantage of it. It was kind of one of those.
You jump on that.
Yeah, and it was funny
Absolutely.
because the writer's strike is really what gave me the opportunity. So they were about 2 weeks into filming, and so look at that guy.
Whoa.
Right?
Whoa.
Right?
6'9"?
So they were about 2 weeks into filming, and the writer's strike happened, and then SAG jumped in, and they were on strike for so long, and they had to shut down filming. And listen, people don't think about this a lot, but there's a lot of people working on a set of a TV show or a movie that got to pay the bills, man. They're not all Hollywood and they're not all millionaires. So when stuff like that happens, those people go out and they find work. They find other work to do.
Yeah.
And so they were going through the roster of who was going to come back and who was not going to come back and who they were going to need to replace. And my best friend was the showrunner, and they were kind of going through things, and he said to Nick Santora, who's the producer, who's the creator of the Reacher shows, he said, hey, and Nick did a back cover of my book. He did a write-up on the back cover of Keep Moving, Keep Shooting. And so my buddy said to him, hey, if we can't get so-and-so back, we can probably just call Clay. He'll do it. And Nick said we should just call him right now. So I was substitute teaching.
Nice.
I was teaching high school, and I get a text. So you get a text from your best friend that says, I need a phone call in 5 minutes.
You call him.
Okay.
Right? And you drop what you're doing, right? So I'm like, hey man, I'm in the middle of class. He's like, no, I need 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay. So I got somebody to watch the classroom, and I stepped out, and he goes, listen, man, I just need a yes or no right now. When we resume filming, do you want to be the military consultant? And I'm like, dude, you didn't have to call me for this. He goes, yes, because I needed to hear your voice. I need to hear you say it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. He goes, okay, I'll tell you everything else later. And he hung up the phone.
Just needed you. And hey, I'm going to tell you, if your police consultant ever falls out, I'm available. The answer is yes. You heard it from my voice.
So it was great. And it was a great group of people to work with. They were super willing to learn. And, for all of us that have been in jobs like, the 3 of us have, you don't want to just tell them to do something. You want to tell them the why, right? So
Correct.
it makes sense to them. They were
What's my
always willing to
motivation?
listen. Yeah, they were always willing to listen and willing to learn.
That's
And
awesome.
so it was a great experience. I didn't get to touch costuming. Just one of the ways they were structured and organized and all this other stuff. So I did get to do a lot of sets and props, and then advise on some dialogue and some other things. But just didn't get to touch the costuming. So if there's anything wrong with uniforms, don't blame this guy.
Yeah. Well, it's Reacher, so I doubt there'll be a lot of uniforms.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True statement.
So you served, and we've spent so much time talking about guns and your time in Reacher. I just want to get into some of your stories. Why don't you tell us about some of your time and how you were, what your job was in the military, and what you did while you were there, and how that's kind of led you to then you said writing the book was kind of your transition out of that. So take us on that journey.
Yeah, so I'm a Chicago kid, born and raised. I come from a blue collar family. And,
I can hear that Midwestern accent.
Yeah, and you know what? I just moved back, after being in the Army for 25 years, and then getting my kids through high school and moved back to Chicago area to be around my family. And but anyway, so I was in college, and I got an older sister and a younger sister, and I come from a blue collar family, and I was trying to help mom and dad, kind of make ends meet and pay for my college. So I had a friend of mine in a similar situation, and he's like, "Hey, if we join the National Guard and we go to college at a state school, National Guard pays your tuition." And I was like, hey, "Let's go. Let's go talk to the recruiter." Right?
That sounds like
so
the
we go and we
starting of
talk to the
Pauly Shore
recruiter.
movie.
Yeah. So we
In
go
the
and
Army
talk to the
now.
recruiter, and short version is I enlisted as an infantryman in the Illinois National Guard, but I went to basic training in AIT at Fort Benning, and I fell in love with the Army, but I hated being a private. I hated it. So, but I had a drill sergeant who took a liking to me, and he said, "Hey, listen, you're a college kid. You're in the Guard. Go back to school. You're clearly got some, eyes on being in the Army, and you seem to like it, and you seem to be good at it. So go back to college, join ROTC, come back in as an officer." So I did.
Oh, nice.
And so I went on active duty in 95, second lieutenant infantry. I did all the typical infantry stuff. I went to the basic course at Fort Benning. I went to airborne school. I went to Ranger school. I did all that. My first duty station was Fort Riley, Kansas. I was a mech guy. It was a good learning experience, but I moved on from there, and I went to what ended up being my favorite place in the Army, and that was the 82nd Airborne Division. So
hell yeah,
I was
gonna
yeah.
say airborne because of the
So
parachute.
I ended up after so many years being a master rated parachutist, but I went to the 82nd.
Curious to know if you know one of my police explorers who ended up a sergeant in the 82nd Airborne after I trained him up in the police explorers. And we'll talk.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
So I was a company commander there, and I was a company commander on 9/11. So, I'm in charge of 135 paratroopers, and the world goes to shit. So, it was a little bit of a shock to all of us, but in the sense, like, the 82nd always has a battalion on 2-hour recall, meaning no matter what you're doing, you have to be sober and in uniform and at work in 2 hours if the phone rings. So
it's on call.
So we were on recall, and it happened that morning, and I didn't go home for 3 days because we got essentially held there to shut down Fort Bragg, secure the installation. And then, so that picture right there is me in Afghanistan in 2002. We hit our first deployment cycle. My first deployment, I was a company commander in June of 2002 till December. And so, I'm a company commander. I'm in charge of 150 guys at this point. And I did my first combat tour, and I was home from Afghanistan before the Iraq War ever started. People lose track of kind of how those two happened, the synchronization of that. But I was home from combat, first combat tour done, and I watched the Iraq invasion on television.
Yeah, because Afghanistan was all the horse soldiers and all the guys that were sent over
Yeah.
ahead of time, and
Yep.
there was a lot of guys over there serving and doing the Lord's work way before we decided to say, you know what, and fuck Iraq too.
Yep.
We had special forces there, but can I ask you a question? What was that like coming back from a combat deployment, and now you're watching the invasion of Iraq unfold on TV? What did that make you feel? Because you were training people during 9/11 when it happened, and now you're sitting there watching the invasion, yet you're in this whole time and you're ready to rock and roll. What is that like?
So I'd been there and back, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of us that become, I won't say combat addicted, but there is a piece of that, truthfully. And I,
sure.
I ended up doing 5 tours total while I was in, and then, did 6 months, when we were in Afghanistan, there was, we went to places in Afghanistan, they still had never seen Americans. Like I was there early, right? So we're home, and then the Iraq invasion's kicking off, and, do you feel like you should be there? Absolutely. Like, hey, listen, man, I just did 6 months. I can go back and do this again. I'm already trained. I've already got, I've been in a couple of gunfights, whatever, you want to go back. And then unfortunately, just the way the Army rolls is I spent the next 3 years working on the training side and then being a student myself. And then, I'm coming out of staff college. I'm a brand new major. It's 2006, right? And Iraq is smoking. Like the surge is happening. There's all this stuff going on. And all I want to do is go back because if there's a war going on, you're a warrior. That's where you want to be. And I got sent to Korea.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh, Korea! Oh,
well, it wasn't awful. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it was good.
Korea!
Yeah, but it wasn't the war, right? So
No.
Literally, I got over there, and the first night I had my own office, which I'd only been there for about 2 weeks. But the first night I had my own office, I stayed there because of the 14-hour time difference. And I got on the phone with Army Personnel Command with HRC, and I was like, "Okay, I'm in Korea. I'm signed in. My clock is ticking. How do I get back to Fort Bragg after this?" And that's all I wanted to do. And it's one of those be careful what you wish for. So I did the year in Korea, and I was supposed to go back. I was assigned to go back to Bragg, and I was supposed to go back to my old unit, which was great. And literally, I fly out of Korea, and then the 20-ish hours of travel, something happened, and I get to my house in Kansas. And I'm there, and I open up my email, and it's like, hey, we need you to get to now. I've been gone for a year, unaccompanied, no family. I've been in Korea.
Right.
And they're like, hey, we need to get you to Fort Bragg right away. We need you to sign in because we need to send you to Northern Iraq.
Oh,
So I did 12 months, right? Got home, packed up the fam, moved to North Carolina, shoved them in a house, in process, jumped on a plane, and I went to Iraq for 3 months.
That must have been tough.
And so that unfortunately that just started the cycle because I did 3 months in Northern Iraq, came home. I was home for a year. I did Baghdad for a year. I was home for 7 months. I did Kabul for 13 months. And then I was home for another just over a year, and then did another 6 months in Afghanistan. But I had a 60-month window from mid 06 to, mid 11, where I was in Asia 40 out of 60 months, either in combat or assigned in Korea.
Wow.
And it's, my son was born 3 months before I went to Korea. So out of his first 5 years of life, I was gone for 3.5 of them.
I mean, that's the sacrifice we make, right?
Yeah. And for my generation, for our generation of guys who served, that is not uncommon. My story is one of hundreds of stories that sound just like mine.
Mm-hmm.
But we're the GWAT generation, the global war on terror. That's what we did.
But during that generation, there was a whole group, a class of people, like a whole category of people on both sides, in the Marine Corps or the Army, who were in combat MOSs, but never got to go over there during the same exact time, which I think is just absolutely insane. It's so like you were part of that GWAT generation that really got used and utilized the way you were supposed to. But then there's a whole other class, they just got all the training and they're like, all right, you're going to go, then they can't get, you're going to go, then they can't get.
Yeah.
Crazy.
There was I was surprised. So when I did the 13-monther in Kabul, it was probably it was the most stressful job that I had, but I learned the most. I was the aide de camp to at the time Lieutenant General Rodriguez. So he was the ground force commander for Afghanistan, commander of the ISAF Joint Command, and I was his aide. So we were working, 20-hour days, 7 days a week, traveling 3 days a week, planes, trains, and automobiles to every one of the regional commands in Afghanistan. And so, but it was a joint headquarters. And the thing that killed me, and I'm not poking at Marines. I love Marines. Don't get me wrong. But like, we had a 2-star come over to be the J3 in our headquarters. Right. And, I was talking to some folks and I was like, so what's this guy's background? What's, and they're like, oh, well, he's done, this and that. And, he hasn't been a division commander, but he's got, 5 tours and all this other stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, that's cool. 5 tours. All right. And he's in the club with everybody else. And then I found out they were all exclusively Mew tours and he had never gotten dusty boots. This is a Marine 2-star, right? Never stepped foot in Iraq or Afghanistan and never been even operational at like CJTFO in Africa at the time, which was, I won't say it was hot, but it was busy, right?
Sounds like you did a bunch of Westpacks.
Right? Exactly. Everything he had done was, blue water, Pacific kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there were folks that, due to needs of the Army or needs of Marine Corps or whatever, that just never, it was never equitable and probably never could have been, but it just wasn't equitable across the board. It just it was what it was.
Yeah. I'll say this, like one of the things that we try to do here, because we've gotten, we've had people on that feel like they shouldn't be on here sharing their stories because they never deployed or they never this or they never, and we always tell them, look, there's no such thing as a second-class veteran, right? You signed.
Good. I like it.
Yeah. You signed your name on the blank check, whether you're chosen or not. One of our co-hosts on this show and on our locker room, live show, he served in Clinton's Navy, and through no fault of his own, he never went anywhere. In fact, he was on an aircraft carrier that only had one aircraft unit. He was on an LHD, so it was all helicopters, and they had only enough helicopters to staff one crew. So he was an airman with no aircraft crew the entire time he was in, and he hates it. His heart for service, that itch never got scratched. But that doesn't make your stories any less invalid. You served, you joined up. So whether you're somebody like Clay who gets the short end of the stick and gets, shoved out into the shit, 3.5 years running, or whether you just signed up and ended up, sitting in Okinawa for your entire time, you still served. And so that's the message we always want to push out there. So I know we talk about like you're talking about, Clay. It's sometimes it's luck of the draw, right?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. My ex-wife used to call me the bad penny. It was like I would show up to a unit and they'd get put on orders. Yeah. It was just it was what it was.
You're a ship magnet.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the dead bodies. Yeah. Yep. You're gonna get the unattended deaths. You're gonna get the domestic that turns out to be, a brother, sister, husband, wife. Like, you're a shit magnet.
Yeah. I was that guy, and it was,
best people to work with, by the way.
What's that?
Best people to work with.
Yeah. I kept things interesting,
and boring.
But the interesting part of it was I stayed so current with everything that like my train up cycles were like a joke. It's like I just got home. Like, what do you like, I'd look at the guys who are trying to be like, oh well, this is the most current thing going on. I'm like, listen, that hasn't happened in 18 months. You know what I mean? Like it was, but it wears on you. It took its toll on me. Like so many folks from my generation, my body is broken. I'm 100% disabled in retirement. I have all my parts and nothing works right. Like joints, back, 10 years of my career jumping out of planes, something I still do with a bunch of veterans down in Florida, but because it's something that I enjoy and it kind of still gives me that sense of belonging,
Right.
with a good group of folks.
That camaraderie.
Yeah, but all the body armor on and off of vehicles, in and out of helos, all that stuff. My body's jacked, man. Like, and it's
Fast, brother, fast roping down like 2 stories right onto your heels. That sharp pain goes straight up to your spine,
right.
and then you eat it, and then you're boom, you snap up, and you're just ready to rock and roll. You're like,
Yep.
whew.
Yeah, what's that? They have that really shitty name for the basically the controlled crash coming down as an airborne.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, it was they call it a PLF, a parachute landing
yeah,
fall, and you're
that's the one,
supposed to hit.
PLF, yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to hit, all your points of contact, and 90% of the time it's feet, ass, head. Like you're just, it's that's just the way it goes. And I've gotten my fair share of concussions. I've got as best guess from a functional MRI given to me at Hershey Medical, I've got in the neighborhood of a dozen in my life, which is, it's not a badge of honor, but it was a factor of life. And listen, I was a full contact boy growing up. I still play sports, jumping out of planes and close proximity detonation of high explosives and, all that stuff. It takes its toll. But that's who we are.
Yes,
that's who this generation is.
we signed up for it.
We did sign up for it. And I hope, if you've got guys like you were talking about, that Navy guy, I know there's this weird sense of like, I didn't do my part, or this weird sense of I wish I could have. Most of us who were there, who did, will say, don't ever wish for that. Like, that's not something, like you should, one, never feel bad because you did sign up to it. Just, it is, circumstances are what they are. But two, don't ever wish to be a part of those things. Like, it's great and it's awesome and we tell great stories and blah, 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 blah. But listen, if I could erase a lot of the crap out of the back of my head, I would, believe me.
Well, I'd say he's now he's worked in the film industry for many, many years, and he's the heart for service never left him, and so he put himself through EMT school, and now he serves as an EMT. So he's getting his fair share of seeing shit and seeing human misery.
I bet. Probably worse than most of us did.
Yeah. So
he has the most healthiest.
Oh yeah,
I was gonna say, Tom, he has the most healthiest midlife crisis.
Yes. Like, his midlife crisis was not to divorce his wife. His midlife crisis was to get married, have a kid, and become an EMT. Yeah.
That's backwards, man. Like,
it's way backwards. But
you got to
understand
that after he got out of the Navy, he went to prison for and again, I tell people all the time, right? There are 2 paths when you get out of the military.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of military vets they need the structure. They needed that. That was so good for them. And sometimes they didn't even realize how good it was for them.
Yeah.
And they end up, getting themselves in trouble. And so he got out of the Navy, and he was still a little bit lost, and he met a girl, and she did him wrong, and he did some shit that landed him in prison. And he's not shy about it. He's shared it on our show. It made him who he is today, and it shaped his life. So, God has a plan for everybody and puts you where you need to be when you need to be there. And right now he needs to be married with a baby girl and being an EMT, and he ends up working concert venues. He gets to see some great concerts, some great bands as an EMT at the Hollywood Bowl and at the Intuit Dome. And so he's living his best life. Everything worked out, right? Yeah. So I'm curious about your combat jumps, because, our show is all about stories, and what is there one jump in particular, one combat jump in particular that sticks out to you as the one that you would either never want to do again, or the one that you would do 1,000,000 times over if given the chance?
So I don't have any combat jumps, and truthfully, there aren't a lot of people that have them. Since GWAT,
really?
right? Yeah. So just from 9/11 on, right? So there was, some Rangers and special operations guys did a jump into Kandahar, into Afghanistan early. There was another smaller jump. There were a couple of very small jumps. Again, Rangers special operations guys in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Then there was one very large jump of 173rd Airborne into northern Iraq, and that's it, guys. Like that's it.
Wow.
So
it's interesting then, because one of my original co-host who was 101st Airborne and a cop, when he got to 101st Airborne, it wasn't even jumping anymore.
Yeah,
It was now it's now
Yeah.
air assault, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a different
Fast roping, shit
seems
like
like
that.
it's a lot of new methods.
Yep.
And I let's be honest. I mean, that slow descent under a canopy over enemy territory is one of the most vulnerable times in a soldier's life. So
You're
it
listen,
makes sense.
I've done it plenty in training. You know, I've got, you know, and again, I do it still for fun, you know, with guys and friends of mine in Florida. And we do military style round canopy static line. I have an old World War II C-47. It's called the Phantom Airborne Brigade.
Did you make the Normandy jump for the anniversary?
Ass, dude.
I did not do. I have not done Normandy. That's a bucket list. But like I'm
I went
going
to
in
the police
February.
academy with a guy who did the Normandy for 70. I think it was
I'm going
75
in
years.
February to jump with those guys again.
Nice,
But when I was on active duty, I did 77 jumps, you know, good. Most of those at night, most of those with combat equipment. So we trained for it all the time. And I'll tell you, there are very few things in training that are more dangerous than a night airborne operation with like 1,000 motherfuckers, like, and all your equipment and all of that. Like, you know, it's dangerous and people die. Like in training, it's dangerous and people die. So I will tell you, in a training jump, there is one that I would not want to do again. And we did have a fatality, and that's why. So I was jump mastering one night, and you know, I go out and, you know, I hang out the door and I do my checks, and, you know, I'm staring out into the darkness and I'm looking for my reference points, and we're, you know, less than a minute out. Right. And so I'm looking for my 30-second, and all of a sudden the Air Force loadmaster grabs me and he pulls me out of the door and he shuts the door. And I'm like, what the, and I look at him and he just says, we're going around. And I'm like, what? So we come off the drop zone, we start to bank, and then he yells in my ear and he says, jump master early exit on aircraft number 3, which was the one right behind mine. I was in the second aircraft, right? We were jumping, I think, 11 aircraft that night. So which told me that one of the jump masters fell out, hanging out the door like I had just been doing. And I'm like, oh shit, right?
Damn.
So we come back around, and, you know, I go through all the same process and procedures, and send everybody out, and I go out the door, and, you know, everything, you know, hit the ground and get my shit together and put my radio into action and do a radio check. And I find out that guy exited way off the drop zone.
But he was connected. He was hooked up. His line was hooked up.
He was, except for the fact that he tried to hold himself. He tried to keep from falling out. He lost grip with one hand and he held on with the other hand. And when he finally lost his grip, he spun out of the aircraft, and his main parachute never fully opened. And he ended up burning in. So that was literally the guy doing exactly the same thing I was doing, one aircraft behind me on the same door, looking at the exact same things 100 yards behind me. Right. So we hit the ground, and of course, like, the training exercise stops. Everybody packs their shit up. We all move to the area where they suspected that he dropped, and we gridded it out, and everybody, you know, searched for it, and we found him right before the sun came up. So you know, that's one that, you know,
that sticks with you.
Yeah.
Wow,
And so,
oh my gosh.
You know, and jump mastering is one of those things, you know, they tell you in school that the sky more so than the sea is unforgiving. And so if you screw up as a jump master, it is literally somebody's life on the line. So I do it now with these guys that I jump with in Florida, Phantom Airborne Brigade. I just got recertified as a jump master, and I take that shit very seriously, as you should. But that night, whenever I do this stuff, that night never leaves my thoughts, because again, it is literally the guy he was 100 yards behind me. He was me 100 yards later. That's
I don't know how long ago I told this story on the show. My grandfather was a World War II bombardier in the Royal Air Force, and so he was on the Lancaster, and he remembers they were taking some heavy flak, and the plane was hit. And he told me this story, and it's the famous story in our family that not many people but me retell, because obviously I have a special connection with my grandfather that maybe some other people don't. And he goes, and I said, we're going down. You know, the plane was in trouble, and he hits the door. and he grabs the sides and he goes to completely bail out. And as he's 2 hands and a foot out the door, and the ball of his foot is still on the edge of the Lancaster, and he feels a hand like you did grab him and pull him back in, and it's the radio man, and he says, "What are you doing? We got to jump. We got to jump." The radio man looks at my grandpa and goes, "Not without a parachute, you don't."
Oh, damn.
Yeah, he in his panic, he had not put on his parachute. Now,
Jeez.
as it turns out, when they were getting their the pilot was able to get the fire out and they were able to land.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to jump. But that was that first moment of like the first time you're ever in a plane that you think is going down and you got to bail out. And he was ready to bail out, but he had not, he didn't have his senses around him.
Yeah.
Luckily, his radio man. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here,
Wow.
So wherever you are, Royal Air Force radio, he's probably dead now.
Yeah.
But thanks for my existence.
Yeah. So I had a grandfather who was in B-17s over Europe.
Oh,
so he was started out as a waist gunner, little Irish guy. So he was a waist gunner, spent a little bit of time in the tail, but he was also a little bit older. And when I say older, they used to call him the old man. He was like 25.
Right. He wasn't 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So near the end of the war,
Yeah.
They actually, as an enlisted guy, he was a tech sergeant, and they made him the bombardier, the toggelier.
Oh.
And so he did that for the last few missions that they flew. And then my dad's dad was in torpedo bombers in the Pacific off of the Wasp, USS Wasp. And then my dad was an enlisted Air Force guy, 66 to 70. He worked on, he was an avionics tech on C-130s and all this stuff. He did not go to Vietnam, right? So he's one of those guys too. So
his number name, it's again luck of the draw, right?
Exactly. So he was on orders to go twice. They both got canceled, right? But they all, when I told them I was going to airborne school and all this stuff, they were like, no, like on fire and gonna crash. Like that's the only time you jump out of a plane is under both of those conditions. They all thought I was insane, crazy.
Yeah.
Well, so you retired.
You could not pay me to jump out of a plane.
Oh, I would do it. I would do it. Absolutely, I would do it.
Yeah.
It's one of my bucket list things. Now I haven't pursued it because being a cop and having a family to support, I can't take the risk. But once now that my kids are older and I'm not supporting them as much, like I might take the risk and I might do it because damn it. The best thing I ever did as a narc, I told people being in narcotics was the best assignment ever. Working undercover,
sure,
and doing the spy shit. And then ultimately when you take down your investigation, you get to dress up like, SWAT guy and do your own entries and do the dynamic shit. So you get the best of both worlds, right? But doing the stabo for insertion into marijuana grows. So hanging from a Hughes 500 or a Bell Jet Ranger from a 50-foot line is the closest I'm a super huge Superman fan. That's the closest I'm ever going to get to that experience, right? So jumping out of an airplane, skydiving is still on my list.
I'll tell you though, and I've done a bunch.
I'll tell you this right now.
Oh, Chuck's got a delay. Hold on. His camera keeps dropping out. He's got a delay, so we may have to give a pause if he gets if he gets behind.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Just go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Right. Okay. Chuck's on pause.
I was just gonna say that. Oh.
Do we need to cut this out?
Chuck, go. Chuck, go. We'll wait for Chuck.
We're all right. Oh,
waiting on Chuck.
Oh, gosh. Honestly, I don't know what's going on, but you could not pay me right now to jump out of a plane. But back when I was in the military, I would have given my left nut to go and jump out of a plane and get my wings. And something changed after I had more kids and, started seeing the world work a little bit more. And I was like, I don't think now I'm afraid of heights. Like you cannot pay me to go up to the Eiffel Tower to the observation deck. Like no, I tried to do it in Las Vegas, made it to the top, and I was shaking. I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here, dude. Like, so it's just, I'm afraid of heights now. I don't know why, but it is.
I would never, it's not that I'm afraid of heights. I don't like being in like unstable heights where I can't, like, there's no escape, like being at the top of a building where you're like, there's no way out of here. And I've got to go all the way back down. Like if I was at the top of a building on the roof of a building, base jumping, and I knew the way out was to jump, I think I could deal with that. But being stuck at the top of an observation deck, and I've been to the top of the Sears Tower, I've, all that stuff, seen it, done it. I'm good. I don't have this burning desire to be at the top of every tall building just because I've seen how that movie ends when they fly a plane into it, and I don't like it.
I will tell you, if you haven't done it, just for a taste, go to Vegas.
Yes.
Right? Go to the top of the stratosphere. Right? I've done that too.
Yeah.
Go to the top of the stratosphere, pay $150, jump off of it, land at the bottom, you're done. It's easy, right? 850 feet. It's not that high.
Oh, no.
I mean, it's still gonna kill you, but
but I will say this though, and no joking around, that probably more to me scarier than jumping out of an aircraft. And I had a friend of mine, guy that I commanded with, he's a few years older than me, and he was a prior enlisted guy during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So, and he was one of the few guys in that 100 hours of combat who saw some actual shit combat, right? And he told all of us, we were all captains together, and he told all of us before we went to Afghanistan, he goes, listen, the first time we do a night air assault, right, infill in helicopters, he goes, when that door opens up, he goes, your asshole is going to pucker so tight you're not going to be able to get out of your seat. And he wasn't lying. Like, we did a couple of daytime, we did some daytime infills and that kind of stuff. But my first night infill on a helo was in support of a Canadian special operations organization. And it was me and, about a quarter of my guys. And we were just, kind of the cordon for a snatch operation. And, it was a very interesting flight in because we flew with special operations, the Task Force 160 special ops aviation guys in the Army. And it was a very interesting flight in, under nods, the whole 9 yards. And listen, when they, that crew chief turns around and he gives you that, that 1 minute, and then he gives you that 30 seconds, and we're flying in a Chinook, right? I mean, it's not like a Black Hawk, we're flying in a big old bus, and, we're all standing up for that last 30 seconds in.
Yeah. And there's no hiding.
And there's no hiding, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, my buddy wasn't lying.
Yeah.
That right there, that very first time, I don't want to I've done it 50 times since then, but I don't want to do that first one over again. I can tell you that.
No. Well, first time's always the hardest, right?
Yeah.
Now you retired as a light colonel. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what your favorite story, because let's face it, the more you promote, the further away you get from the job, right? It becomes more administrative and less about, being kinetic, right? So as a light colonel, what is something that you recall as being the highlight of your career and where you would say, yeah, it was, promoting was worth it?
So, my two jobs, well, I had 3 jobs fun that I would classify mildly as fun as a lieutenant colonel. The first one was I was assigned to the 82nd again, my last time there, and the division was forward. The division headquarters was actually in Afghanistan, so I was the acting chief of staff in the rear, which was painful because you're a baby colonel and you got a bunch of full colonels that they ask for stuff and you have to tell them no, and they get pissed off, and so it's never a fun job. And then from there, I went and commanded a heavy cavalry squadron at Fort Bliss, which was a lot of fun because I was, in command of, about 500, Cav scouts, and really was a fun time. Had a great group of folks. And then when I left there, I went to a job that was very taxing. I went out to the National Training Center, which is in Fort Irwin, California. So it's out there in Death Valley. It's outside of Barstow, for those of you that are familiar with California. Right?
Yeah. Nobody goes to Barstow voluntarily, by the way.
Right. So, and it's literally 2 hours. It's on the 15. It's 2 hours from LA and it's 2 hours from Vegas. But
if
it's like
God were to give California an enema, he'd probably stick it in Barstow.
Right. So
it's
we're
the
out
Marine
there.
Corps Logistics Base, right?
Not far from there. That is correct. Yep.
Yeah, right there.
But it's Fort Irwin, so we're out there, and really what we were doing was training and evaluating units before they deployed to combat.
Yeah, that's where all the OPFOR stuff goes on, right?
Right. So we were the training and evaluation team, or one of the training and evaluation teams. So what you really had was a bunch of very senior and very experienced folks. And my team was interestingly enough the airborne team. So I was back jumping out of planes again.
Go figure.
But but I had a great team of folks who were all very senior. It was a great learning experience, and it was very interesting to be in charge of a bunch of people who essentially need no training for their job. Like they were the ones training and evaluating their peers, right?
Sure.
So there wasn't a lot of work for me to do. So I got to do a little bit more of the fun stuff, like I got to focus on, fixing the airborne program out there. So we did a lot of jumping while I was out there, which was great. But that is still a dangerous place. And so we were evaluating on a live fire one night. And so, we have 2 infantry battalions, combined infantry and armor battalions. So we've got M1s and we got Bradleys, and it's they're doing a dual attack, right? At night, live rounds, live explosives, live artillery, the whole 9 yards. And we're doing it at night. And all we're doing is evaluating and making sure everything is going safe, right? So I went with one attack. My sergeant major, my senior enlisted guy, went with the other one. And all of a sudden I get a radio call that says, hey, we've had a short artillery round and one of our vehicles is hit. And that's one of our evaluation vehicles is hit. Now we were driving around in soft skin Humvees, and I'm like, holy fuck, somebody's dead.
Yeah.
So now I'm like under nods, I'm breaking contact. I'm driving across the desert, and I'm like, okay, I know live bullets are here. I know live bullets are here. I know I can go this way. But I'm hauling ass, and I'm by myself. And I get there, and by a miracle, it was a short round from a 155, and it was a white phosphorus round. And it went through the back of the Humvee, right down the middle, through the radio mount, and blew the entire engine out of the front of the vehicle.
Wow.
And then all of the white phosphorus splattered forward, right? The guy who was supposed to be in the truck had just stepped out of the truck.
Oh,
right. So he stopped, put his truck in park, stepped out to go talk to somebody, and here comes this 155 round right through his vehicle. And so, like, I'm literally pulling up, and my sergeant major is telling me over the radio, hey, no casualties. It was this vehicle, blah, blah, blah. So I literally fly up there, lock the brakes. We've already hit a ceasefire. And I walked right up to the guy who had just literally dodged a bullet, and he was a master sergeant. This guy had been in the Army for 25 years. Right. And I walked right up to him and just gave him a big old hug.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. It's the and it was just, it was,
you're celebrating life.
Totally reactive. Like I just walked up, just big old hug. And when I left, when they gave me my farewell, they do this tradition out there where everybody gets on the radio and they say something about you, kind of as a farewell. And that guy said that, he will never forget that for the rest of his life, was that it was, just me out of the darkness, the big old hug. So I think it, just that weird bond that you have with people in the military and those so close calls, that, people don't, outside of our realms of work and our careers that we've done, people don't understand how close things can be sometimes to being catastrophic, and then how you feel when they're not.
Yeah. And the relief, nobody understands I'll tell you. So if you go back to our 3rd episode of this show, is when we all started by telling our own stories. And I talked about my partners, and when I bailed out of my vehicle, my hat came off, and it was stuck in between the B pillar where the seatbelt comes out and the headrest of the truck, right? And so you've got this hat tilted sideways on the headrest, and my truck's all shot to shit. And my partners are in another truck that got away, and we're posted up around the corner, and they're trying to look in binos, and we're hearing a cop's been hit, and they're hearing a cop's been hit, and we thought they were struck because one of them got shot in the neck, but only the round, if you can believe this, hit the 45 round, hit the hood, flattened out, went flat like a frisbee through the windshield, smacked one of my partners in the neck, and fell flat on the floor of the truck. Right?
Oh,
But we didn't know that. We just saw him backing up past us with the exploded windshield and his hand around his neck. So I'm trying to get them, yet they're looking through the binos, hearing a cop's been hit and seeing what they think is my head tilted sideways, still in the driver's seat. So the relief when we both got each other, I'm like, I'm fine. You're not fine. He's like, no, we're fine. You're not fine.
yeah.
And so that relief when you think your brother is dead and you find out they're okay, and it was only by the grace of God that they survived. That relief, there's no, I mean, I've been through a lot of uplifting and positive experiences in my life, and that ranks up there in the top 3.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm with you, man. And it's, sometimes it's because you've done the other side of it, you've had the loss, right? That it's so much more impactful.
Yes.
When it turns out okay,
right.
It's when you've lost some folks along the way, as a lot of us have, that when you have that stroke of luck
to finally not lose somebody,
right? To not lose somebody, I think it's so much. The feeling is just amplified so much that it's so distinctive. You can't forget it.
Yeah. And you never will, and you never should, because that celebration of that reminds you to appreciate the good things.
Yeah.
So, well, so let's talk a little bit. Where can people find you and find your book? It looks like if people want to find you on social media, you're on Instagram, and it's C as in Charlie, Novak with a K, author. Is that right?
Yep. That's me.
And is that how they find you everywhere?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
See Novak author there on X. I do a lot on LinkedIn. I've kind of expanded
as we
being an author.
You there. Yep.
Yeah. Expanded beyond being an author. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn, and obviously on Facebook, because old people are on Facebook.
Yes. I am as well.
But at claynovak.com, it will get you to my website.
Yeah.
I
found you through claynovak-author.com.
There's either one will get you there. Like thankfully I've got some folks advising me that are much smarter than me. When I first built my website, it was, try to distinguish it, claynovak-author. And then, it's like, just make
a Clay Novak.
Make it Clay Novak, you idiot. So that's what I've done. So both will get you there, claynovak.com or claynovak-author.com. But
the book is available on Amazon?
On Amazon.
Awesome.
And then through Barnes & Noble, you can go to your local Barnes & Noble and order it. Through Amazon, if you're nice to me, you can contact me, and maybe I'll send you a signed copy. I'm trying to be
as nice to you as I can. I want to read it.
Yeah, yep, that's the website. I do blog a couple times a week. I also co-host a podcast with a lady named Elsa Kurt. It's the Elsa Kurt Show with Clay Novak. We do politics of the day. There's all the past episodes. We've done some live episodes, but you can find us on YouTube. Elsa Kurt is her name.
Mm-hmm.
And then the book is available on Amazon. It's Keep Moving, Keep Shooting. And like I said, that was kind of my transition when I retired off of active duty. I started writing just to write, just as a kind of a release or an escape or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. I had no intent to publish. I really didn't have any intent to write a book. But I got about 2/3 of the, I finished it. And then I sent it to my dad, who's a voracious reader. And I sent it to my best friend, the guy who got me onto the Reacher show.
Mm-hmm.
And, my dad's a typical blue collar Chicago kind of guy. And he read the book and he said, "Good book. Don't quit your day job." It's typical dad thing, right?
They got
awesome. And I love him for it because he keeps me grounded. And then my buddy who's, works in Hollywood, he read it and said it was good and then didn't say anything And after a year, he's like, listen, man, he goes, nobody writes a 300-page book and doesn't do anything with it. You got to publish this thing.
Right.
So I went through the process and I got it published. I just worked through a deal. It's now going to be available through AFES and all the PXs.
Nice.
So Army and Air Force. And then now that we've got some joint Army Marine bases, it'll be in some of the Marine Corps ones too. So that'll be happening in the next few months.
They will love coloring in it.
Yeah. Yes. With their tasty crayons.
Get out of here.
But,
I tease Chuck because
listen, I
he's a
tease
Marine.
because I love. I do.
Yes.
But no, so the novel it's a Jack Ryan, Jack Reacher, Jason Bourne,
Nice.
action fiction kind of thing. It is
Love it.
not Clay Novak's war stories.
I
But
look forward to it.
but I will tell you that, I wrote it again, not intending to publish. So the main character, you will find some significant similarities to yours truly. He's a retired
awesome,
infantry
though.
officer. He spent a lot of time in the 82nd Airborne Division. Like his story is a lot like my story. I tell people, Terry Davis is the main character, and he's about 85% me.
Yeah, Terry Davis is probably your idealized version. If you could fix things about yourself that you wanted to fix, he's probably
but he's
taller.
Yeah, but he's flawed though. He is.
Sure.
He's flawed like the rest of us.
Right.
He's got. He's a GWAT vet. He's
Right.
Yeah. So, and then there's a lot of characters in there that are based on, they're either an amalgamation of 2 or 3 people I know, or they're based exactly on some people that I know.
Right.
That's awesome.
So they're pretty authentic. But it's, he's retired. He's enjoying his life in the Midwest. He's hooked up with a pretty smart lady, who's a PhD and an expert in Middle East studies, who does some DoD contracting work.
Nice.
And she gets notified of a potential domestic terror threat. And he can't turn the switch off, so they kind of discover, or they think they know what's going on, and then the story evolves, and it turns out to be not at all what he expected. So a lot of twists and turns. It's very, people who read it tell me a couple of things. One, they never saw the ending coming, which I love hearing that.
That's good.
Oh, that's awesome.
2, when's the sequel coming out? And I'll talk about that in a second. 3, when are they making it a movie?
You're like, I have no idea, but I'm open to suggestions.
Right. And then the last one is that it's a super quick read. I actually had a guy tell me, and I don't know how much I believe this, but I had a guy tell me he read it in an LA to New York flight. But I do know a lot of people have read it in 1 or 2 sittings. Like, it's a tough.
Is there
tough to
is
put
there going to
down.
be a movie in the works?
So right now, I'm in negotiations with a publisher to publish both book 2 and book 3, because they are already done.
Nice.
I got them. They're already done.
But they're probably going to want to stagger them. They don't want to release them. Yeah, you got to stagger them. You can't.
Well, maybe not.
Really?
This is a point of discussion. Like, people binge watch now. They
True.
don't, like, if you think about it, would you rather walk into a bookstore and go, hey, look, there's 3 books in a series, and buy all 3,
Yep.
I've done
buy
that.
one knowing there's 2
Yeah.
more behind
Yeah,
it.
I've done that.
Right.
I mean, I
So-
bought series of books in a box set. So yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
so it's
Same
always
thing
worth
with
the
shows.
discussion. But
Yeah.
is there going to be a movie? I would love for that to happen. I've got some folks that have piqued some interest in it, but we'll see what happens.
You're in the right place now.
Yeah,
Talking to the right people.
I am. And it's and truthfully, even as I've expanded and so I also run one of the 50 things that I do right now is I run the pro staff for a company called G Code. You
Hey,
guys is
I love their
Elise,
stuff.
right? It's good stuff. I'm a big
Love
fan of
their
it. And they make great holsters, but they make great everything.
Oh, yeah.
Literally,
Nice.
Their modular system is not. It was the RTI, right? It's
RTI, yeah.
Their modular. So my second career after I was, retired from the police department was putting gear on movies. I was buying tactical gear and advising for film and TV. This is what you should buy. This is the right gear. This.
Yeah.
And so G Code. When people came to me and they said, "I need high speed, low drag, super badass," it was like G Code. Was top right at the top of my list. I say, if you want like general stuff, the basics, you go to Safari Land. You want like high speed, low drag, cool shit, you go to G Code, and you know,
Yep.
because everybody come, oh, don't we want Blackhawk? No, you don't want Blackhawk. No, oh, do we want, no.
Yep.
G Code, maybe some Blade Tech. There's some other,
Sure.
Alex and Ryan. There's some good company, but G Code was always one of my go-tos because their stuff is so good. So,
Yep.
I'm not getting paid by them. You are, but I'll pump their tires and say their shit is good.
Truthfully, I'm not. I run their pro staff just because some folks asked me to, and I'm all about good kit and advertising good kit. I don't care who makes it, and they do make good kit. So I'm going out to SHOT Show, which is a bucket list for anybody who does anything that has to do with guns.
Oh, SHOT Show's a good time.
Yeah, so I'm going out there, in a couple of weeks. Actually, this will probably air after I'm back from SHOT Show, but I'm going out there, and who knows? The goal is to keep writing. I love writing. I enjoy writing. I blog twice a week. I write freelance articles all over the place, and I enjoy it. So the goal is to keep writing, and if that means selling it to make movies so that I can just keep writing all the time, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Well, one of these years we're gonna have to take the show to SHOT, our podcast to SHOT Show, and we're
that'd be awesome.
Oh yeah, I've always wanted to go to SHOT Show.
SHOT Show's amazing, but it's so overwhelming. SHOT Show is to gun guys in the tactical community what Comic-Con is to geeks and nerds. It's just huge, and it's days and days, and you can't see everything, and so it's a good time. And you'll walk away with a permanent hard-on for a couple of days. You may have to call a doctor if the erection lasts longer than
4 hours. Yeah.
So we always want to make sure that we give our guests a chance to dedicate their episode to someone that was a brother or sister that has passed on, and we understand you have a dedication for us.
Yeah, I was in Baghdad late 2008 through almost all of 2009, and it was a period of transition.
Nothing going on there.
Yeah. And we were, and my battle space was right next to Sadr City, literally.
Oh, wow.
Like we bordered up to Sadr City.
Wow.
And so, not long after we took over the battle space, we had an EFP strike. And it was our first real legitimate contact and unfortunately a combat loss. So, we lost a staff sergeant that night, the 10th of January of 2009. And his name was Justin Bauer, and great young man. Unfortunately, the EFP came through his vehicle, wounded the driver, and killed him as the TC, as the staff sergeant and squad leader. So it was, and really, for all of us, and that was my third tour. But for all of us, it was that like, okay, we're back in the shit again. That was our first one, and we lost another NCO later in that tour. But that one hits home. It was I spent a lot of nights, like probably some of you guys, and a lot of your listeners, I spent a lot of nights on a lot of helipads, saluting helicopters that flew away in the darkness. And that one was, that one just, it always, for whatever reason, that one specifically sticks in my head. So, to him, to Staff Sergeant Bauer, and that night, in Baghdad in January of 2009, I'll dedicate this show.
Well, rest easy, brother. We've got it for here. And Clay, we appreciate all the time you spent out in the shit, both following and leading. And it's always interesting when we're able to get, because like I said, we've interviewed everybody from the privates to light colonels, and we've interviewed fresh green officers to chiefs of police. We've even had fire chiefs, and so we're always, no matter what rank and no matter what your deployment status, no matter what your combat status, doesn't matter if you have the national defense ribbons from every single campaign from the beginning of time to now, or if you just have one, you sign the blank check, and we appreciate all of your service, whether you're a police officer or firefighter. I had it said to me that, by a member of Easy Company, that police officers deployments last 25 years. They just do it 12 hours at a time. And so we definitely appreciate everybody who served. That's what the show's for, is to let your voices be heard, share your stories, and understand that we all have that common factor, which is the heart for service. I talked to so many people that have said, oh, these poor soldiers and this and that. Poor soldiers? Are you kidding me? It's that Braveheart mentality of looks like we didn't get dressed up for nothing. If you put on all that gear, you want to go be the tip of the spear. You get all that training, you want to go try it out. What's the use in building a hot rod if you're never going to drive it?
Yeah, nobody wants to practice and practice and practice and never play in a game. Nobody.
Yeah, no, it gets tiring real quick, really quick.
Yeah,
sure does.
Yeah. So, Chuck, what do you have for us?
Well, Clay, thank you so much for coming on, sir. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to read that book. It sounds amazing. Guy getting out of the military, transitioning, and just all that awesome stuff that's coming along with it. Your book sounds great. And there's a book 2 and 3 that's getting.
They're coming.
Yep. Did we lose him?
He
He froze. There he goes. So if you want to be on the show, we're looking for
EM. And thank you all.
Yeah, we lost him. We look for EMTs, paramedics, dispatchers, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. We look for anybody that wants to share their story. We also are interested in speaking to dispatchers, because dispatchers sit quietly behind a microphone and listen to everything going down and are unable to do anything about it. It's got to be one of the most frustrating and harrowing jobs to hear the people that you look after and care about going out on the street every day and going through what they go through, and just praying that you don't send them to their, how many dispatchers have dispatched an officer to a call that gets them killed?
Yeah.
And the things they carry from that. So you can always reach us at, if you want to be a guest, reach us at booking.warstories@gmail.com. You can get us on all our social media accounts. Instagram is at @war_stories_official. And Facebook is Facebook/War Stories Official. So you can find us at all those places, and you can get us on TikTok while it's still up and running. We're shilling for China, I guess. It's TikTok.com @War Stories Podcast. Contact our producer Dylan if you want to be on the show. He's reaching out to lots of great people like Clay here, and we're also on LinkedIn. But also remember to join us for Locker Room Live. It kind of fluctuates. We based on our schedules. Right now we're releasing on Thursdays, but that may change. And if you want to join us live for that, you have to tune into our social media, because our social media is going to tell you when we are recording it live and when you can jump in. Clay, we'd be happy to have you come on and talk a little crap with us live about the politics of the day and the news of the world. Right. Our last episode was about all the fires in Los Angeles and the theories going on around whether they're accidental or on purpose, and why the firefighters were so ill-equipped to battle those blazes. And we have some boots on the ground that have been on this show, friends of ours that are on the ground in Los Angeles fighting the fires and fighting the good fight. And so our prayers are with them. And hopefully by the time this episode has aired, they're all still safe and sound and they've got that under control. And if they haven't, we are in deep doo-doo anyway. So we'd love to have you on there. And Chuck, you're unfrozen, so I want to give you the last word and you can sign off for us.
Thank you so much, Clay, for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was great. So make sure you check us out, warstoriesofficial.com. Grab some gear. And as always, come on with your shield or on it.